Bing, bada boom. One last thing to touch. Funny, sometimes Twitter says this broadcast is not available in your location, and then it just clears up. Like you can't figure out where you belong or something.
Right.
Okay, we're hit this other button here. Hey everybody, welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Rob, how you doing?
Doing terrific, Todd. How are you?
I'm alive and good. So no complaints. It's Saturday morning, and I got up relatively early and did some chores. So
Oh.
to do
Chores, that word just brings to mind so much joy and and fun, doesn't it? Chore.
it does, and it's because that's exactly what it is. It's a chore. It's something you don't want to do, but it has to be done. And
Well, that's life right there, isn't it?
That's
It's doing
right.
things that you don't necessarily always like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's like taking out the trash, getting rid of the Amazon empty boxes, recycling. Of course, I live in the country. If I want to recycle, there's no recycle.
Just goes into a big bag, right?
Well, it goes, like, no, we've got a burn pit. Yeah, So, it's kind of interesting, but change of lifestyle living in the city than living in the country. And you're like, you're used to the garbage truck arriving once a week. Well, there's no such thing. So anyway, everyone, welcome to the show. You don't want to hear about my garbage. And hope you're all doing well. And the world of podcasting continues. And, Rob, as you and I have been conversing over the past couple of days and thinking about what's going on in this space, it's really a wonderful time for podcasters because there's really, if you think about it, I don't want to start off on the same theme from the last show, but it's like limitless possibilities for content creators.
Yeah, sure.
And, you can't say that about really anything else.
Yeah.
You can to a certain extent on other content platforms, but really it's, and I think I just go back to that again. It's almost like going back to the roots again and again and again that, I just look at me, from where I started as a non-entity, as a blogger, poor one, very, very poor blogger. I maybe had 300 people a week went to my website. And just this opportunity to just talk about stuff you're passionate about. And even though my show's not massive, it served me well, and I've had a good time with it. I think that in the end is, for a lot of us, it's all that's important, right?
Yeah, I think that the opportunities in podcasting have never, I've always been, if we want to, talk a bit about the openness of the medium, it's really a blank canvas that's open to all to be involved in great content from all over the world, from all sorts of diverse cultures and races. And, I think that it's a medium, like you say, Todd, that's really open to everyone. And I'm really proud of that. And I think it's really exciting to see podcasting industry reflect the world. And that's what it's turned into. And it's really exciting. I don't know how many early events that we went to that it was definitely not that.
No.
Back in the early days of the medium. But certainly we've progressed quite far on that.
And I think back to, and, the early days were technically challenging,
Right.
and we have to acknowledge that. But I think that it's at the same time, I really probably didn't realize until later
Mhm.
what really true what the true scope of what would be created would be. And I think some other folks did much earlier. I think back to oh my gosh, I'm gonna get pummeled by them. They're a couple of gentlemen out of New York, and the Feast of Fools.
Mhm.
Remember that show? It was a um, LGBTQ, the
Right.
Mark Fallon and what was his partner's name? Don't remember. And they really, to me, that's when I kind of had this eye opening that wow, you know, we're empowering voices, and it really, I think, and it didn't happen in this again. It was a little bit later, maybe in the
Mhm.
first 6, 7, 8 months. We're just trying to figure things out technically and make things work and try to stay on the air, and you had all this kind of cool content popping up all over the place, um, and really didn't realize later to put it frankly, what what was happening. And in retrospect, it was a cool time, and I don't like to use that. Keep going back to that gatekeeper word that I so
Mhm.
love to use right now, but it was a different time. But now, there's lots of opportunities: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You have lots of places you can share and do stuff
Mhm.
and have communications, and
Yeah.
but then what we started, I think, and what we have today. And if you look at the makeup of events that we were going to that were physical events, pretty split
Right.
crowd, 50-50.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been great. That is for sure, and I think it's continuing to expand and move in a really positive direction. But Todd, I did wanna mention something, that I shouldn't really have to say, but I need to probably say it, and that's, um, you know, some of the things that we talk about on the show are kind of, you know, my own opinions on things. They don't necessarily 100% represent, my employer, Lipson. So I just wanted to put that out there. So sometimes I think people, link up some of the things that we talk about on this show with our employers as the official positions of our employers, and that's just not the case. So, um, there's multiple voices in any company, and any one person just has a contribution to make to any kind of a conversation on a topic or issue, and you know, I don't believe that we're always the ones that are in charge of making final decisions on anything. So some of the things that we talk about on this show, um, are mostly our personal opinions about stuff, and focus on our efforts to better the medium. And sometimes we don't get stuff right, and we say things that may not people may not agree with. But those are thoughts, and we're an evolving couple of guys here that are learning from what's happening in the world too. So, and we're just trying to bring you along and share with you our thoughts. So,
At the same at the same token, Rob, I think our perspectives are such that comes from a period of being here a while
right.
in a space and seeing what has evolved. And a lot of people don't have that long term perspective just because they may be a newcomer to the space, or
Right.
maybe even a new competitor to the space, and have preconceived ideas about, and they have no idea the makeup of one's
Mhm.
companies or how we got from point A to point B
Right.
or any of that stuff that has been done. So I think
Right.
that's important too. But at the same point, I think we both understand that the space has today there's no barriers to entry for anyone doing content. And that's in the end really, the crux of it. Now, yes, there
Right.
may be financial, yes, there might be equipment barriers, but with free offerings out there like
Mhm.
Anchor,
Mhm.
if you have a cell phone or any type of recording device, you really can get started today for nothing, and so there is truly, from that perspective, no barriers to entry.
Right,
And
and there's always room for improvement on all these fronts, and I believe in every issue in the podcasting space, there is room for improvement, and change is part of that. And I think, if anything, Todd, you and I are trying to reflect change in the medium in this show as much as we can. We don't always comprehend the full ramifications of it, or the full impact of change that happens in all aspects, whether it be technology or content or monetization or all these issues that come up in the space. And all we can do is reflect the thoughts of the moment. But we're also open to people giving us feedback and give us ideas on how maybe we need to think about things differently as you look to the future. And I think just generally in our culture, that's kind of how we need to approach these things, is to realize that we're all learning.
I've always said too, Rob, that the reason we do this show, and the reason that we have people on, and the reason that we talk with content creators every day, is we have to keep a pulse on what's going on, what's changing. My business per se, is not necessarily in the content business. Yeah, I create content on this show. I create content for my own podcast. We do an internal show for Blueberry, but we're not in the building of content business. We don't hire talent. We don't screen ideas. At least at Blueberry, that's not part of our business model today. And we're here to serve. We're here to, that's why we're a service provider, is we're here to serve those that are creating content and those that are building networks and give advice. I was on a phone call with this week with some folks that are looking at building networks and have some exciting ideas coming out. And it's not me to interject about the content that they're creating, because that's their game plan. It's my job to say, okay, let's structure the way you're going to, display this, or, how you're going to interlink it, and give some, all I can do is go back and give them historical stuff, like what we did at Tech Podcast in the early days, and say, hey, there has to be a user agreement. There has to be commitment. There has to be cross promotion. Make sure you have that in your, if you don't decide to do that in agreement, that's up to you, but it's just a little perspective. And again, I'm not in the content building business, but we do get exposed to a lot of that stuff.
And I also wanted to mention too that the thoughts that I just shared with you also apply to my work with the Podcast Academy as well. So just keep in mind, all these organizations are made up of groups of people that represent the podcasting industry, and their thoughts are just as valid as mine. In any kind of discussion around issues or topics in the medium, are discussed openly and freely in the meetings and in the conversations. And we will all do the right thing. It just, sometimes we need to get feedback and to learn from the priorities of the community to make things happen in a way that everyone expects. So, and Todd, your comments about us, both of our companies not being involved in content, I think is a good segue to talking about what was announced from Art19 this past week, of how they're moving into what I think is a little bit more aligned with what we've seen happen on the Stitcher side for many years with with Earwolf and Midroll. So they basically added a content creation side, and direct sales, which I thought they pretty much already had that. I think they probably just formalized it, but they've partnered with some content creators out there to create a division in the company that's going to create new podcast content, kind of like what happened over at the Midroll, and the Stitcher company was creating content as well as a listening platform. So I think what we're seeing, and I don't give me your thoughts, is kind of a verticalization of the industry. If you look at a lot of the bigger companies in the medium, whether Spotify or now the SiriusXM folks, they're acquiring companies that are giving them abilities that are basically across the whole spectrum of the ecosystem. And I think that's a big shift that's happening in the medium right now, is that more of the companies that are involved in podcasting are doing more. And I think, Todd, to some degree, you're a reflection of that too, are doing more than just one part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, and again, I've stated on this show before, I don't think I ever want to be in the content creation business. I just, it's not, I'd have to, that what that requires is bringing on a whole team, and a team would have a whole separate division to be able to work that and do that. And
that's exactly what you have to do, Todd.
Yeah. Creating content as an official function of a company is in developing content and developing shows. That's expensive and it's risky.
Well, it's expensive and it does require a different type of pool of talent.
Right.
If you think about both the companies, Lipton and Blueberry, and what our core competency is technology, right? We're both technology companies, and to some degree, we're into ad sales and things like that,
sure.
which is very much linked up with technology.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get into the content business, that's kind of a different thing. And I saw that firsthand when I was working at Podcast One for the 1 year that I was down there, is that, technology and content, it's sometimes a difficult fit together because the cultures are so different and the brains that are needed are so different, right? That sometimes those cultures don't fit together. So you have to almost create a separate division from it. And I believe that's what we're seeing happen in the market today with a lot of the big companies in the space, is that they're creating separate groups that are just focused on that.
And there's a lot of money coming into shows that are being built and launched. You look at these, they had the upfronts here just recently with the presentations there, and so they're trying to sell those shows and sell episodes and get money coming into that content. So when Art19's doing this media division,
right,
it's truly all about chasing dollars, chasing advertising dollars from content. It's not really a pure, they're not doing this because they love content. They're doing this because they want to make money off that content. And
and I would beg the question at this point, if you see the patterns that are happening at some of the other bigger companies, is that we may see, like an Art19, acquire a listening platform at some point. You start thinking about the true verticalization of this. That is the logical next step, right? Especially if you want to produce any kind of exclusive subscription-based content. That's the piece that you need, and that's what the Stitcher company had. Is they had a listening platform, and they had the ad sales, they had the content creation piece, monetization is what they got when they got acquired, right? So things are, you can kind of see how things are shaping if you really back up and you look at the 60,000 foot view down on what's happening. I don't know what you think about that, Bud.
Well, I think it's going to evolve over time, but I think in the end, if you look at the involvement of the space and you look at new entrants that are even competing with us, because every new entrant is going to have something that they're going to try to differentiate themselves, and that's fine. That's what the space is for, and we all kind of look at what each other's doing and say, "Oh, that was cool," or you say, "We'll see how that works out." But I think that we are not immune. We've understood where the space is going, and we're making adjustments within our business models to make sure that we're serving the current crop of creators coming to the space to make sure that they're best served in what they want. It's part of our it's part of our modernization plan. When you're at 15 years, and next week on Tuesday, Blueberry's 15 years old. It's hard to believe, to be honest with you. We have to continue to involve. And as you said earlier, part of that involvement in keeping the heartbeat of what's going on in the podcasting space is we do this show and we compare notes and we review what's being talked about in the space. And from that is formed ideas. You often will, we don't talk business. We don't talk shop about what each other's doing. If we did, we both would be probably fired. So what we do though is when we get done with this show, we walk away with probably some common ideas, and we go back and say, "Hey, by the way, look at this,"
Mhm.
and we probably get some of the same takeaways. We've been doing this show long enough that we probably do that. So I think that gives us a little bit of an edge over maybe some of our competition, because I don't think they're having these types of open public discussions. Maybe they're listening to the show, obviously. At
Right.
least some of them are,
Yeah.
and so they have to earn their stripes up into the space too, and figure out
Yeah.
what's going on and evolve.
Yeah. And these open discussions that we have on this show are, our motivation is to build, an atmosphere of sharing and willingness to help each other as much as we can. And that's always been my goal of doing this show. It isn't like, Todd and I make money at this. If anything,
No.
it costs our time and
That's right.
and Todd money on bandwidth, because we are making the show available as a video podcast too. So,
Yep.
and that's a big video file that goes out there. But it's all about giving people access to this show, and we are welcoming of people joining us on this to talk about important issues in the medium, and those things come up. I'm going through the process right now with the Podcast Academy. I can go into a lot of great details, but we're coming up with a detailed mission statement of what the organization is going to, be all about. I think this is a pivotal time in the medium to maybe address some issues, and an organization. There needs to be an organization that kind of does that, and I think that the realization is coming to the Podcast Academy that we need to serve a much bigger role in the medium than what has been currently proposed, and that's what's being discussed right now. So I think it's definitely a positive direction of what's happening. So this is a very important time. Whether it be politically, environmentally, culturally. I mean, you just go through all the checkbox of things that we're going through right now in this world and in our lives. It's monumental right now. I don't know that there's ever been any time, Todd, and give me your thoughts too, where there's been so many aspects of human life that's under strain and change right now.
Well, I think that I don't want to get this show to get political at all.
No, I'm not.
So I
getting that way
think
at all.
I think that there's a myriad of things happening, at least here in the United States, and with COVID and everything else going around, that has fundamentally caused some shifting in thought
Right.
process and everything, and how business is done, how we interact, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But in the end, as far as podcasting goes, where the rubber hits the road is content. And
Right.
if you have something that you want to say,
You
then
can say it.
start your own podcast or do a podcast and put your opinions out there, and do a 90 minutes twice a week, and let things just be on the line, and we'll see how you fare.
Right. Just realize though that openness doesn't always come without a price.
That's
So,
right.
There is a certain amount of accountability that exists naturally from the crowd, right? So if there's opinions around various topics, you may face that. It's been a common experience that I've had around doing radio or podcasting, that when you take a position, and that position can be represented in a lot of different ways. Some people aren't going to like it, and you have to have a little bit of a tough skin, to be a podcaster, in my opinion.
And I think Rob and I have been willing to really be opinionated when we need to be, and call things as we see them. Does it make us right? Maybe not. But guess what? It's our opinion, and you can take it or leave it. And so I think that is that's the beauty about podcasting is your words, your thoughts. that's you put it out there, and it is what it is. But doing a show like this, and there's the train, Rob. Should we go run jump a train? Doing a show like this where we're putting out our thoughts and processes of what we think about the podcasting space for 90 minutes twice a week. You know, who else is doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you take a certain amount of risk, and I did that with my radio show for many years too. I mean, I got called out for topics that I had on that radio show too, and hey, it's part of, if you're getting called out for something, or if somebody's saying something that, maybe negative or something like that, hey, at least they're listening, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that there has been, a certain amount of kind of, what can I say, kind of crowd oriented shaming that's gone on in the world just in general that is, counterproductive sometimes, but maybe there is, maybe it is positive in the bigger picture of things. But yeah. Hey, Todd, I wanted to mention this other topic that's an interesting thing to talk about
Sure.
too, and that's this concept of being able to create a voice agent profile of yourself.
Yeah.
And to create audio content via written text.
I think we talked a little bit about this before because some of the other major software packages has some of this capability.
Yeah. Well, one is the Descript platform. They have a product called Overdub, which is basically it's being done as a way to edit audio. But what's been created now is the ability to add to your audio based on text changes that you make to a transcript. So you can actually add audio to your show based on a textual edit.
That's kind of cheating, isn't it? You say something during your show, you're recording it and say, oops, I don't want that in there. Go ahead and cut it out and replace it with something else. Seems a little bit.
I don't know if it's cheating or, I mean, I think it raises a lot of issues. I mean, you could use this technology to write your whole episode, and then you just run it through the software and it'll generate the audio file.
I'd like to hear how that sounds.
You actually saying it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear how that sounds. I bet you that's real clear. I could see for 2 or 3 words.
And it sounds pretty good so far.
Well, it's pretty scary too, because someone could steal your words and put content out that wasn't created by you as well.
Well, that's the issue, and that's why I raised the topic, is that I think that there is a feeling in the medium to some degree as this technology develops that there is some risk of people creating content of things that you never said.
That's right. They could create a fake conversation that was secretly recorded and put it out, and if it's fake, you could deny that you said it, but it's your voice being used to create that. There has to be some sort of protections put in here, because this could be used vengefully by many, many different parties, and people would have just tricksters would have fun doing stuff of all kinds of, at all levels.
Yeah. I mean, it is an interesting methodology to maybe create post-read ads, but I mean, if you wanted to automate post-read ad creation.
Would it sound like this? Because
No, it actually doesn't sound like that. Actually, if you look at the technology, and I was looking at it, you can add emotions to the inflection, right?
So that's even more scary.
I know. You can make it sound serious, or you can make it sound passionate, or, I mean, there's all these designations in how the verbal profiles that you create. So you as a content creator would go in and create a voice profile, right? You'd spend like 10 or 15 minutes voicing some things, which has been going on in voice to text technology, where you go in and you train the software, right, with your voice. Well, this stuff is capturing that for reproduction, not so much straight transcription. So that's the evolution that happened here. But but yeah, Todd, I mean, it raises all these ethical questions around, you know, a lot of technology can be used in a positive way and it can be used in a negative way.
I think I always lean towards the crazy stuff that could be done because you look at it, every content creator out there, this show, we give them 90 minutes worth of voice sample.
Right.
And now, unless you
definitely
have to
create a
read a
profile on us.
specific sentence or something in that system to train it,
Right.
you know, or do you just upload some audio and it learns your connotation?
I think the technology is currently positioned that you have to actually voice it into the system. I don't believe that you can upload an audio file and have it replicate into a voice profile. I think you have to actually speak it into a microphone.
Well,
So
I guess that's a start.
well, I think it's probably the best way to do it, actually, for the platform, because then the platform control what words you speak to better populate the algorithm.
We don't have to worry about doing that in this show. We don't edit.
Well, that may be the most dangerous thing to do, right? Because then it's natural, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, these issues are complex, and there's positive uses for this technology, but there also could be abuses.
Right. Well, I don't know.
Take the good with the bad, Todd.
Yeah, and they're being real spammy right now. That's the only thing I'm a little irritated with Descript is they're hitting every RSS email address known to man right now.
Right.
So every podcaster should have got an email from them, spam email from them saying, "Hey, look at what we're doing. Come over here and give us a try."
Yeah. Well, this technology, the overdub technology I was talking about, is actually rooted in another technology called was it Lybird or Lybird? I think it's Lyrebird is the name of it. I believe it was a company that was started in Descript actually acquired them, I believe, and it was an AI research project.
Huh.
So I don't know if they were acquired or Descript actually created it. I'm not sure. So, but anyway, it's based up in Canada.
And Descript has an interesting. They want people to integrate with them. They don't want to integrate with anyone. It's a little bit discouraging because the Hindenburg folks, they integrate. They actively seek out integrate with other platforms. Descript says no. You have to come integrate with us, and I'm like, well, why would I do that? You know, show me how many of my customers are over there using your platform to begin with. So it is interesting from a tech side. Yeah, they want you to integrate to them versus them integrating to us.
Right. And I believe that they just announced that the overdub voices technology, it says that you can choose filler words to delete from your audio. So if you say or or words that don't add anything, the software will go in and automatically remove that from your audio. Yeah.
You know, and it's if you compare it to Adobe Audition, you know, it's anywhere from, well, they've got a free trial 3 hours and then $12 and $24 a month. So it's still a monthly cost. Oh, actually, monthly is more expensive. You do monthly is $15 and $30. Annual is $12 and $24.
Right.
But I don't know how many people are actually using Descript.
I don't know. They do have some competitors out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But hey, Todd, did you see this other initiative that was started by National Public Radio to make the first localized daily news podcast?
Daily. Localized daily. Yeah,
so
I know.
They picked some cities around the country, I believe, that
18 cities.
Yeah, that are based on probably their National Public Radio affiliate stations, I would imagine.
So they're going to have, and I read this too, they're going to basically have a set of base content, and then they're going to stitch in local content.
They've been doing this kind of stuff for many years around genres, where they'll take snippets of content and they'll create like a climate change podcast or something like that. I think they dropped doing that, but it sounds like what they're trying to do is get a little more geographically targeted. I think maybe support the local NPR stations, but but I also wonder too if this trend is gonna push another change, which may be needed, is categorization and maybe a new RSS tag in the RSS spec that's gonna be more focused on geolocation source of where this content is sourcing from. So local. I mean, I think this has been around radio, and I don't know if we've talked about it on this show or not, but it's been around radio for a long time, right? There's the listening apps that you can pull up, like TuneIn or whatever is a good example, that you can select a city. Let's say you live in Seattle or whatever. You can pull up all of the stations that are in Seattle and listen to those. We could conceivably do this with podcasts too.
I think what they're really doing here, though, is going to be very expensive, number one. And number two, I don't think that we'll see how those local communities grow those individual shows, because, when I think of podcasts, I don't think local right now.
It's also tapping into localized advertising.
Yeah.
So, which is a huge area that radio's been tapping into for many years, right? That I think that radio feels a little bit under threat by what's happening with people not spending as much time, commuting, right? And spending time with radio. Localized advertising is under threat for a lot of reasons.
Well, local folks don't have a lot of place to advertise right now besides radio, because there's the newspapers. No one reads a newspaper.
Well, that plus there isn't a lot of newspapers around anymore, right?
And some people in big cities, but the newspapers that I see, I actually picked one up 2 days ago just for some odd reason. I went into a convenience store and saw it laying there, and I grabbed it, and it was today's edition of my local news, and everything in there was 3-4 days old. It was like, wow, this is, and then maybe 1 or 2 or 3, 4 local articles, but the news was, they could have had a one-sheeter with the, with the local stuff, and the rest of it could have been thrown away, because there was really no news. The news was, digitally, I had already received it. So that's part of the challenge too. So I think, radio is still a good place for local people to advertise on. But the problem then is how do you, because radio's had this, they've had it 2 different ways. They say, we've got this much listener share in this market. So if you live in a city that's got 100,000 people, and they've got whatever their listener share is, that equals out to so many people listening, quote unquote. And then that's how they base their rate card on how much to charge for that advertising. Well, okay, so that's been a hocus pocus method. It's been put together by Nielsen and others over the years to help radio charge really high advertising rates for that stuff they put on broadcast. If we could extrapolate podcast numbers into the type of radio numbers, boy, Rob, you and I would do very well. We could start a podcast locally and probably not need a day job, because we could demand, these extraordinary advertising rates,
right,
and not have to prove it. But in digital, you have to prove it, and so therein lies the difference. So actually, the advertisee in small communities will probably get more value and pay less money for reaching an actual audience that's not some contrived number that Nielsen's come up with.
Right. And then, and there's always been this opportunity for local podcast content. I believe it's just been a factor of numbers and marketing, um, around how many people are even aware of podcasting and listening to podcasts on a regular basis. And then it's up to the platforms to make content that's originating out of any given location that a listener happens to be in, kind of visible, right? As options.
Radio's got the best. If they played their cards right, they could make the transition to digital, and it's gonna, if they did, it's not a complicated formula. So
No, it's not.
you take your radio content that you have today, you keep producing it, and then you start farming in local podcasters for sports, for tech, for science, for home and garden, for lifestyle, and you count on them for 2-3 segments a week.
Right.
All of a sudden you got a viable local in the community interest radio station again. And that's a big thing that most radio, you see, some of you don't know this, but radio has to file annually a document that basically, what did they do for the community? What was their community purpose? What was the community good that they delivered? And they have to account for.
It's called. It's like a public service,
right?
Stuff, right? Whether it's public service announcements or public service involvement, community. That's part of their license. The FCC.
Right. But it also includes local news, local highlights. It could, anything local they can count and put on that form.
Right.
And they have to, because you just can't play radio, can't play the music. They just can't do just that and be in the public interest. So, but unfortunately, Public Utility Commission and all these other groups, or all these folks that are over radio licensing, they basically, I think it's just smoke and mirrors now on those type of documents they submit, because there's very little true local radio. There's some, but this is a way for them to once again assure their license can't be and you can, as a citizen, you can say, I don't feel they're serving the public interest, and you can complain, but no one does, because no one's listening to radio, at least in my opinion. They are. I'm joking a little bit here.
Yeah.
And unlike seeing, and it's different in other countries, but here, at least in the United States, they could solve their lifetime issues, by their legacy issues, by embracing some more podcast media, but I don't think they have the foresight to do it.
Yeah.
Majority of them.
I would imagine, though, that the radio listening is coming back up again, because I think people are out and about. I think I'm seeing more people commuting to some degree than maybe were a few months ago.
How long does it take to change someone's habit on what they listen to?
Yeah, well, I kind of went through that here recently. I did the whole Nielsen journal thing, for radio, and I found that I think one day out of a week I actually listened to radio.
So I think you've got people sitting in their homes, and most of what they hear on radio and TV is depressing. So they play something else. They play some music, or.
And Todd, I have to say too, just to be totally frank and honest about it, when I got picked to be one of those Nielsen, journal people, it caused me to think more about listening to radio, right? That maybe I wouldn't have naturally.
Boy, they sure sucked you in for the $2 they gave you.
Well, I wanted to go through the process to see how I felt about radio, and I think every person that goes through that journal process has to think about that. Do they want to be 100% honest about it, or do they want to listen to more radio that week? I mean, it does force you to think about that, right? I chose to live my life the same way I did,
right?
But that thought crossed my memory, or my mind was, do I need to listen to radio more? Right.
Did you?
And that might skew the result.
Did you need to listen to radio more? Did you get any, or was it the same old caca?
I listen to the same thing that I've always. I mean, I tried to make it as honest, true
Right.
to what I'm actually doing, and not have it influence me in a way that would cause me to do something that wasn't what I would normally do. Right.
The only time I listen to radio is if I am if I haven't get my car and set something up real easily to listen to via my mobile phone, whether it be a podcast or Spotify, Pandora, whatever, Apple Music. If I haven't got that preset up, I just jump in my car and I find myself going down the road and I don't want to deal with my phone too much. And so then I maybe will kick on an FM station and try to find some music or something. And I will usually be like seek until I find something that's upbeat, and I'll listen to it for 10 minutes and that'll be it. But generally, I'm on Bluetooth or whatever and
Right.
Listening to some content that I'd prearranged when I got the vehicle. But, if I jump in and forget about that, it's not the case.
Yeah, and I think if you have a new vehicle, like I do, I have a new Camry, that has built into it CarPlay,
Yeah, mine does
and
too.
you just plug your iPhone in, and it launches CarPlay, and your navigation's right there, podcasts are right there. So
My commute's 11 minutes, so I very rarely plug in my phone
yeah,
in the
right.
car. If I'm going on a road
You're not
trip
in there
someplace.
for
Yeah.
enough, right? So that's, I mean, I think for many people that have an iPhone, it is pretty easy to connect, especially if you have a Toyota, but there's each of these vehicles has different capabilities. Some have Android Auto built into them, CarPlay, some have just CarPlay, some don't have any of them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's driving the choice, is that once you get hooked with podcasting and you have an iPhone and you have a car that's got CarPlay in it, you're going to want to play the stuff that you want to listen to.
Rick said if podcaster had to comply with all these FCC regulations, there would be few of them out there. Well, the lucky thing is we don't go over airways and we don't have to
Right.
comply with any of the stuff that FCC does. But you can be a podcaster and be asked by a radio station to provide a 3-minute clip of something and not have to file any of that paperwork, because guess what? The radio station still has to file all that paperwork.
Well, Todd, I mean, do you think that there's a chance that the FCC could get involved in podcasting?
Nope. If they do, they have to do YouTube, they have to do Instagram, they have to do everybody. Nope. If they do, it'd be a fell swoop for every creator. I don't see how they could ever possibly do that.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you prove, unless someone states, a lot of podcasts, you have no clue where they originate. So how do you know where that podcast is even originating? It could be some American in Australia doing a podcast, and you're outside the jurisdiction of the FCC because you're in Australia. So.
But could Apple be seen as the equivalent of a radio station?
Let's hope not.
Or a radio network?
Well, what about Spotify? I don't think so, because
Same.
it's all over the internet. So.
Yeah, but just for what they do in the U.S., that's the question. I mean, obviously outside of the U.S., it's out of the jurisdiction of the FCC.
Yeah, who sees? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what was done with sales, right? That's what I'm concerned about. I don't know if it's ever going. I mean, I hope you're right.
What about sales? Oh, the sales tax where, I see. You and me in Michigan buy something in Washington and have to pay Michigan sales tax.
Right.
I think that's fair because you're exchanging money, and that's money that you would have spent at your local, hopefully at your local retailer, and that income tax would have went back to, or sales tax would have went back to the state. So I'm sure that was welcome revenue back to.
Yeah, I just wonder if at some point down the line here, maybe it's another 10 years or whatever, that radio starts to decline to the point where the FCC is like going, well, everybody's moving over to listening on the internet, so we're going to regulate that.
Well, maybe the FCC should go away then.
Well, well, as long as radio and broadcast television be around, they're probably still going to be around. Right.
But you think about it, and you're like, well, if radio's on decline, maybe FCC's influence should decline.
Yeah.
Anytime you can get rid of a government agency, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But,
I suppose that's true.
Because the FCC has become nothing more than a political arm because it's been politicized heavily. The FCC, so every time you have an administration change, all the people on the FCC chair are all swapped out with new, new talking heads that answer to the administration. So the problem is the FCC is politicized.
You could make that point about every governmental.
Well, that's probably true too. You're right. But I think what you see though is some have more influence than others in some of the things that they change. So,
right.
But I guess if you're involved in that industry, you probably say that, that government agencies, has a big effect on your company. We're talking about communication. So I bet you if you were in the education business, then you would probably say, well, the DOE, the federal government's department, will probably has a big effect on education too. So yeah, you're right. Every administration change has a change in everything.
Yeah. And then also one other thing too is the American Disabilities Act too has an impact on podcasting. I mean, it's about accessibility to this medium and whether it be closed captions or otherwise, there is legal terminology that's out there that kind of it's more positioned towards radio.
Radio and broadcast,
right?
Yeah.
But it does kind of imply audio, right? Which could be construed over to the internet. And I do believe that some of the platforms are starting to embrace ADA requirements around audio listening and closed captions and those kind of things. Yeah. And I believe that the industry is moving that direction anyway with transcriptions. So right.
Yeah.
I think it's a good trend line on that.
And this is one of the reasons why Apple, we do need some tags. We really do. We need some new tags to address some of this stuff. And if
well, and I think that, as we start going through the list, I'm starting to think more and more issues and areas that we need to come together as an industry to suggest and have and across the industry is, like you said, some new tags to address some of these issues that are brewing in the medium and opportunities too. I think that those are localized content to tags for this kind of stuff around accessibility and transcriptions and some of the tag suggestions, and hopefully that's what the Podcast Academy foster that industry communication is what
I what you and I tried to start with the RSS Coalition. I think here's the problem. And people, I've gotten some emails. Why are you asking Apple to do that? Well, here's the thing.
They need to be involved.
No. I can announce, Todd. I could Monday afternoon after I got my blog post together. I could announce 6 or 7 tags that we need right now. And say Blueberry is and I'll talk to my team. Say we are going to promote and push these 7 new tags. And guess what's going to happen? It's going to do more harm than good because, fuck Blueberry. We don't want to do that. That's their sandbox. Why are they going out on their own? We don't want to show like we're following them. We don't want to show like So the problem is I can announce these tags. We can maybe even Libsyn and us could announce these new tags together, but then it's not industry. It's just Todd and Rob. Right. And
the listening apps need to, or the directories need to support it.
Everybody has to support it. And the only way to get everyone to support it is if someone with a big enough pull, Google or Apple, introduce these new tags, then we're good. Because then the app developers have to say, oh, I got to support this.
Or we have an industry organization that has all those people involved that all agree to it.
Right.
Which, which we've seen, active involvement from a lot of the big platforms with the RSS Coalition. Just the few meetings that we had a lot of big players interested in contributing to that conversation. So I think it's something that needs to happen. There's no question, and I believe that the industry wants to see it happen. Yeah. We just need to create an atmosphere where it can.
And Rick, current tags are not outdated. We need some additional tags.
Right. It's not trying to replace tags. What we need is some new
tag. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we got to be able to have a way to be able to put in the metadata transcript. We have to put in the metadata way to put a closed caption file, because the two are not the same. We have to have the ability to do country of origin of content. Where does this content originate from?
Or city,
or like
state, country, all that stuff.
Right. So if you want to do geographical tagging, just these,
or even language too. Todd.
Yeah, language
That's the other part too. Or this issue came up too around multi-language.
Right.
This issue came up this past week around podcasts that are being produced in 2 languages at the same time. I don't know if you've heard about this, Todd, but there are Spanish podcasts that are being created that are being voiced in Spanish and English together.
Well, I had a guest on Podcast Insider who was doing a bilingual show on one show, French and English, within the same show.
Right.
Not 2 separate shows. One show was bilingual.
Right, exactly. Where they say the same thing in 2 different languages in the timeline of the episode.
Oh, this wasn't like this. It's where I'm speaking English and you're speaking French.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah. I mean, that can happen as well.
Right. But I know what you're saying. Where content is
about shows that
repurposed.
Either break up the content, the same content, into multiple segments in different languages. So you could have an English version at the beginning, and then you break off into a Spanish version for the end.
So
it's the same content.
So I can put together a solution internally where every Blueberry customer could put in a closed caption file in something we develop, and then our player would be able to do closed caption playback in our player. But that's really not a solution. That's not something that transcends where because a very small number of people are consuming content on websites, so it has to transcend into the apps. And all it would take is one app developer to say, hey, I'm supporting this new tag for closed caption.
Right.
And
Todd, if we're talking about, ethnic diversity, multi-language, if we're, and I believe that this industry is all in on that.
Yeah, they are.
These are things that we need to think about and embrace and be able to communicate in the metadata. So listeners know what they're getting with this podcast that's in 2 languages or whatever, because the current structures of the listening platforms today don't embrace this.
Yeah. So what as Rob says, the current tags are insufficient for today. So it's true. And I guess, we can go out on a limb and start it, but what?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast right now, and hopefully we'll see some movement on that in the next couple months.
So it's almost like you guys got to form a technical arm.
Well, I don't believe we have anything yet. I just think there's a recognition of the need, and there's really no one else in the industry right now that's positioned that could potentially do it. So I think
I mean,
That's the
and,
opportunity.
and even if we ask Adam to add those tags, I don't think it's a one-off.
Right. I
You know,
mean, I think Adam would support him.
I think so too. He
But
may
Edward
not
is
fully.
the size
He'd
he's
have to be.
probably going to
He'd
support
have
it.
to be. We'd have to explain to him what the purpose for
Well,
each of these tags are.
well, he needs to be involved in the process. I mean,
Yeah,
if he's going to have an open directory,
yeah.
right?
And we've got a short list already of suggested tags. I've got it right here. In chats that have been developed over like the past year.
Yeah,
You know,
and you and I have talked to Apple, we talked to Google, we've talked to Pandora, we've talked to I mean, about this concept. Everybody's pretty much on board with the idea. It's just making it happen.
And here's the thing. I say, come on, Google, come on, Apple, but here's what they would have to do. See, I'm invoking work on their end. If I tell them,
Yeah,
if I
which
ask,
we're not going to do.
if I've asked them to add a closed caption tag to the iTunes spec or the Apple Podcast spec, excuse me, and they add that, then they have to gear up and get their app. Their gear will have to support that tag. I mean, the podcast, all their stuff then will have to support it. So then
it creates a domino effect.
Right.
No question.
'Cause
it starts at the database parsing and goes all the way through the user experience, right?
So I'm invoking, man-hour work. I'm probably
Right.
invoking, 3 months of work or 4 months or 6 months of work to support all this stuff. So for me saying it is, come on.
Right. It's not good enough.
It's because they have to go back and say, hey, and I'm sure their internal conversations are already, can we do this? Should we
It needs
do
to be
this?
added to their roadmap.
And
prioritized.
when can we do this? And
Right.
when's their budget? And when there's development time? And so we're not going to announce something unless we're 3 months out or whatever it may be.
And where's the value to us to do that?
Right.
That's
Right.
the other piece of this that always gets brought up. Are users looking for this?
Right.
Or what is the advantage or competitive advantage to us doing this? If we don't do it, everybody else does it.
Yep.
Then we look bad, right?
We've always prided ourselves on the accessibility of podcasting. In most instances, the part that's lacking is closed caption. That's the piece that truly at this point missing. And here's the problem too, Rob. If you say, okay, we're going to support closed captioning, there are technical specifications of accuracy that have to be met to call your stuff closed caption. So is it going to be good enough to not call it closed captioning? Because what does Google call it? Google YouTube. YouTube doesn't call it closed captioning. YouTube, they have a word for it.
So I think we've talked about this before, but the accuracy of transcriptions is starting to get pretty high.
Automated is still like 85 to 90.
Right. I've talked to a couple of companies that are more in the 95 to 97 range.
But not free.
Oh, well, free, I mean, cost is a whole different conversation. Right.
I think they call it subtitles. So, so the next question is, so really then, okay, let's say, for the sake of argument, that today we can get a 90% or 85% accuracy solution. And that would be...
That's without voice training. Right.
It's an 85% across the board solution today we can enable, and just about every podcaster could get an 85% accurate file, their transcript of their file, that could have the necessary meta marks in it to make it a closed. Again, I don't want to use it closed caption because you have to be careful.
That's a loaded term.
It's a loaded term that has legal connotation behind it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you have to close caption. I think to be a true closed caption, I think you have to be like 97% or greater.
Yeah. And one of the big determinants in accuracy is accent language.
Right.
And one of the problems is that a lot of these technologies that exist today are not very good at accents or various languages yet. That I mean, they're focused primarily on English because that's where they see the majority of the content. But once we start expanding multi-language or podcasts that are in multiple languages, it kind of throws a monkey wrench into their algorithms currently. But I know that they're working.
So, YouTube had a section where you could go in and take the automated, what they came up with, their automated system, and you could
Right.
edit. So they had a community contribution feature that they would allow the fan base to go in and edit and fix the transcript to make the accuracy. Well,
Crowdsource
guess
editing,
what? They shut it down because it's actually going to be discontinued at the end of this month because there was not enough
participation. Probably.
right.
Well, it's to some degree it's like what happened to Wikipedia in the early days.
Well, there was spam, abuse, all kinds of stuff was being done.
Right, and that's the danger of crowdsourcing this type of stuff.
So I hear a lot of people talking about, well, you need to provide this. Well, okay. So if you say you want it provided then, and it becomes a consensus of the podcasting community, they want to provide this, there's going to be the haves and have nots. The haves will be the people that can afford to get to the 97% solution and pay. And there'll be the have nots that can't afford to pay, but are only going to get to the 85% level. So are our podcasters going to be shamed then when they have only an 85% accessibility solution for captions?
I don't think so, Todd, but I think that there's a risk there for the podcaster to be putting out transcripts that are not accurate. Because what if a word gets put in there that doesn't reflect what was actually said in the podcast? That there could be legal liability.
Well, not if the audio is original. I don't think so, but it definitely could be a perception issue for someone that is reading it that is unable to hear it.
Right. Exactly. It's just a danger area.
So, I'm all for, adding more accessibility. I think we just need to figure out how we can do it. And, I think what we need to do is ask, I don't know if we're assuming. So who should be answering this is those that are affected.
Yeah.
And
that's where the feedback.
But at the same time, I am almost guaranteed there is a huge segment of the people that are not getting access to podcast content that are very angry about that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So,
and are probably not even trying to listen to podcasting because they realize that it's not accessible to them.
Right. So then if we do provide, let's just start with baby stuff. So let's say that we get a transcript tag where JAWS can understand that there is a transcript of a show link and they can load that file and listen to it. Then a transcript, then even an 85% to 90% accuracy, it may have to come with some disclaimers.
Right.
The disclaimer at the beginning of the transcript may say that this file has not been edited. It's been raw. It's been computer generated by artificial intelligence. If there are errors, we're not responsible, or, we're sorry, or whatever the message may be.
And just realize that this technology is going to get better over time.
Yeah.
And it's gotten dramatically better than what it was just a few years ago.
And I am sure that is why Google is waiting to make transcripts available, is the accuracy piece.
And I don't believe that Apple's made theirs available either yet.
No.
Have they? I didn't think so.
I didn't know Apple was doing transcript.
I thought they were behind the scenes.
Well, you might have just broke news, at least with me.
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know either.
Maybe I misconstrued that, but I thought that was on, but maybe I'm wrong.
With there's plenty of services out there that, if you have some dev skills, Amazon has a transcript system. You can run it through Amazon's, but again, it's only as accurate as the tech allows. And again, you have someone with an accent or maybe even a speech impediment or something like that, and then you are in trouble. These systems don't do well with that.
Right.
I look at my niece, after the spending many months in Riley's Children's Hospital and having been incubated for a very, very long time, and lucky to be alive when she came out of that. She communicates beautifully, no problem, but she's just very quiet, and you can barely hear her. So when she speaks, sometimes I have to get a little closer to her to be able to hear her. So these systems have a hard time with audio that's not at the right levels, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues. I mean, even the accessibility of podcasts in like web players, those kind of things too. And I know I checked on this here with the new web player that's coming from us. It's going to be fully accessible. So
we had made about 6-8 weeks ago, we'd made a little change to our web player, and we screwed something up. And we got a note from it a couple days after it was released, say, hey, you broke accessibility. And that become priority 1, priority hotfix. That was, all stopped. And we went in within like 3 hours, we had a hotfix out and got it fixed. But, I think that I don't know if everyone is doing that. I don't know if everyone's checking accessibility. But we got enough users that count on us for being accessible that. But then again, it's not closed caption, so that piece is missing.
Right. Yep.
And here's what's sad, Rob. They don't even know we're having this conversation.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So therein lies, I guess, some,
that puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Right. It does. So what say you? Y'all listen to us. What do you think? You can drop us an email. And if Google or Apple's listening, and what do you think the best way ahead is? I seriously though, we want to continue. And is this the way? Is the Podcast Academy the way to get it done, or does just someone have to stick their neck out and get it chopped off and say, here's what the tags are?
I think it has to be approached just like what was done with the IAB, where people get together and share their ideas, and you work on a common document, and you get agreement and direction, and you get feedback from the community, and voila, you have something that you can share with all the listening platforms to say, this is where we think we need to go, and this is what the community thinks.
Yep. And I think the key is getting consensus. The key is getting consensus, because I've already been down the road of introducing tags. I know that doesn't work.
And I think we're still going to face the issue of individual companies coming out with updates to their own namespace.
That's
I think
fine.
Apple's a good example, right? Yeah. They could come out with their own tag for this, right? Which is okay. And they have every right to do that.
But if we do it, maybe they don't have to do it.
Right.
That
is true. That is true. But we both know Apple's namespace is the default namespace for podcast.
Yeah. And even though some of it's duplicated with standard RSS stuff.
Right. Yeah. So, any change that we make needs to embrace Apple. No question about it.
Someone says, lately, Alexa has been pulling the podcast I listen to from Apple Podcast. I don't have a skill for it. So,
Well, you don't need one. It's pulling it from Apple Podcasts, right?
yeah. Some people had skills for their shows. Elaine says, actually, Facebook Live can generate auto captions. And since you both speak clearly, they might be pretty accurate. But I almost bet you'd be 85%. 85 to 91, 92%, which ADA-wise is not. So maybe they just don't make a lot of it and don't say it. I think of it from a full legal perspective.
Well, I mean, a lot of the closed captions were done for television shows, and movies were done by hand.
Well, that's why they have a 97+% accuracy rate.
Probably higher than that.
Well, I'm sure because that's paid. I was talking with a company that does this
displayed on the movie screen.
Yeah. I talked with a company that does this business. Right. I said, "What does this cost?" And what? And I was kind of like, "Really? You thought your podcast hosting was expensive,
right?
Let's talk about $300 an hour,
right,
to get ADA qualified closed caption."
And movies and TV shows can afford to do it.
And actually, they pay more.
Right, because they want to get 100% accuracy.
I was talking about low budget and closed captioning.
Right.
$300 an hour. So just to do this show, $450 to get a 97% plus closed caption qualified file that meets ADA standard.
Yeah,
that's.
I'm talking to a couple of companies that are getting there for a whole lot less than that.
But not at the high accuracy rate.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, yeah. But it's still. But
it's coming.
But what is the cost? What is the estimated cost? It's still not cheap, regardless.
Well, it's going to be like everything else, going to be volume based, right? So
right.
That's where the costs are going to come down. The more content that gets on board, the cheaper it's going to be.
But the problem is, it's not going to be done by humans. It's still computer generated.
I believe that the top ones are going to give a premium option to select that editing of that last 3%.
Even to get you can't get to 97% with a computer.
It depends, and I'm gonna say that what's going on with the script right now with the overdub might be the answer, but it also comes with some baggage, right? If you create a voice profile of yourself in the system that's doing the transcription, you're going to have a much higher accuracy. But anyway.
Rick asks, speaking of podcasts, what are your thoughts on podcasts and the Roku right now? Well, Roku has fell off the planet as far as podcast consumption goes.
Yeah, I don't. That's a video platform.
We had some success early on, but it was early because we were apps 13, 14, and 15, and of course there was nothing else to look at. So
right.
Eileen says, I don't think there's such a thing as 97% accuracy on any live streaming, even sports. I don't see how that could be possible. Most of those live sports events are being done by hand.
Yeah,
those are not
an actual
person typing.
Right. That's the only way they can do it.
Right. It's not being done computer generated.
You've got to be a fast typist.
There they are, And they actually have like 2 or 3 people that are, they work for a couple of minutes and the next person takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and you notice if you ever turn on closed captioning for sports, it's way behind. So
I mean, well, you say way behind, but it's probably just a few seconds. But yeah, it's
yeah,
behind.
it's behind. Well, you can see
It
it.
has to be, Todd. You can't write
No,
this. It's coming out of their mouth, right? Because you don't know
right.
what's
So
coming out of their mouth.
yeah.
So anyway.
And I would be interested to see what a live streaming sports event is on accuracy. That would be interesting to know that statistic.
I've seen misspellings happen before.
Oh, me too. You see them all the time. But you get the gist of the word, but then but there's definitely the person hit the wrong 3 keys.
Right. It's almost like shorthand.
Right.
That's what it looks like.
It is. It is,
Yeah. So,
and if I had my eyes closed listening to that, or even worse, a braille reader, it all depends on what the disability is.
Yeah. So.
We spent a lot of time on this, so you can tell Rob and I have been thinking about this a little bit, as well as a lot of other people, I think.
Well, there's a lot of issues to think about right now.
And, and we're just what we're trying to do is, be good community steward. Trying to serve everybody.
Right. Well, yeah. And be good for our companies, be good for our own efforts in the medium, and just, be consistent with who we've been in the medium all these years, right? Help move the medium forward in a positive direction.
Yep. Well, we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there any questions or comments that you want to mention from the community?
I'm just listening
to this.
I'm just looking at let me see if anything's on YouTube. Been getting the commentary here. Nothing from the YouTube. We got quite a few people watching on YouTube, so you guys can comment on YouTube. I still watch it over there. Let's see here. Let's go back.
Yeah, I see that there's a podcasting magazine that's been started in the UK. It's called Pod Bible.
Interesting name.
Pod News. Right.
Why would you call it Pod Bible? Oh. Well, it is what it is.
It is what it is, right? And I know that there's efforts, with Steve Olsher around Podcast Magazine.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much from them lately.
Yeah, he's still doing his publications, and I know he's doing his virtual new media summit. I think in a week or so, but that's kind of a paid thing.
So, by the way, we forgot to mention this. Rob and I are both appearing on Indie PodCon.
Right.
So
you're doing your session today, and I'm doing mine tomorrow at 4:20 Eastern.
Yeah, I do mine at 6:25 Eastern. And then you get 20 minutes. It's a beautiful thing. It's the easiest presentation I've ever put together.
Right.
But the conference is going on right now. So at indiepodcasters.com.
Right. So what's your topic, Todd, that you're going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about private podcasting and what should you, can you, what you need to watch out for, and does it really make sense to do it? So I'm going to talk about the difference between implied security and explicit security. I'm going to talk about if you do this is just like if you do levels within Patreon. You have to determine, do you have enough people to pay for this to make it worthwhile? Especially if you're going to make it like bonus material and that kind of stuff. So some of it's common sense, but we're getting a lot of people that are asking us, hey, we want to do premium podcasting, and let's have a discussion.
Right.
And then, the question I always ask is, how many people do you think are going to get subscribed to this, and how much time are you going to put into it?
It's a timing issue, right? I mean, when is the right time to turn on something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is it after you've built an audience, or is it, at the beginning?
In some people, though, there's they have valuable content. Maybe they have training or
Right.
premium
Right.
consulting or something like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
for some, they don't need big audiences to make it work. How about you?
Right.
What are you going to be talking about?
The power and how to build community around your podcast.
Mm.
So, and that's always a topic. It's a derivative topic of listeners' emotional connections with hosts, and then also how to create content that engages with listeners at a deeper level. Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm 6:25 tonight. You are what time?
4:20 on Sunday.
All right.
That's Easter.
Awesome. So look forward to seeing you guys at IndiePodCon, those of you that are attending. And I just finally found some emails from Joe. How was your email inbox this week, Rob?
Normal.
Mine was better.
Crazy.
Mine was better. I started out 1 week with 800 in my inbox after.
Wow.
It was crazy. That's a lot.
Well, it was a relatively slow week, really, because it was a holiday week, right? So it's
really.
Well, relatively slower.
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself.
Take time off, right? So,
but where are they going?
Well, that's true.
What we see is when people take time off, they work on their podcasts.
Well, that's true. I'm not saying there was nothing going on. I'm just saying that there were a certain amount of people taking time off.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Todd. Well, I guess we're wrapped up. We're at the bottom of the hour.
Yeah,
we made it.
We made it. Todd,
I had no idea what we were going to talk about today.
Yeah, I had no clue.
We managed to figure some stuff out, didn't we?
No clue. But we always figured it out. And we had people that tuned in and watch us. I can't believe it. All right, hey, everybody, thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of our little family here. Todd@blueberry.com is my email address. @geeknews is my Twitter. Rob?
And I'm robg@lipson.com is my email, and you can certainly send me an email with questions, comments, criticisms, whatever you feel like you need to communicate to us. And I'm on Twitter as well, @RobGreenlee.
And if you think we should have somebody on the show, let us know. You want to be on the show, let us know. And happy to have you on, have a discussion. So everyone take care. We'll see you Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
And we'll be back with you with another edition. Everyone take care. See you next time.